Hey everyone, and welcome to Voices of Veritas, a podcast made by the church for the church. I'm Ryan Hennigan.
And I'm Michael Bashaw. At Veritas Community Church, we believe that the gospel of Jesus Christ is at work in and through us, transforming all things.
On Voices of Veritas, you will hear real stories of gospel transformation, spiritual insights, and heartfelt conversations that seek to encourage us as we follow Jesus.
We invite you to join us twice a month to listen, learn, and grow in faith together.
Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the Voices of Veritas podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Ryan Hennigan, joined today with my loyal, wonderfully talented, flannel-clad co-host, Michael Bashaw. Michael, how are you?
I'm doing really good. Is clad-in a word? Because it should be.
Is it clad-in?
Flannel-clad-in.
Yeah,
it kind of rolls off the tongue, though.
Is there like a past tense of clad? That's the question.
That is the question.
Yeah, I'm not sure. But it's a good flannel. It's the classic brawny, like flannel, lumberjack, black, red, checkered. Yeah, it's good.
Oh, thank you. I had my hiking boots on earlier, so I really would have fit that stereotype. But yeah, okay. I appreciate it. How are you, Ryan?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. Yeah, it's been a long week, but spring is officially here, so trying to get outside more, and it's been a little tough with the hail and the wind.
It's been quite a weather week here.
Some days are like, 80 degrees, so been nice to get outside, and grilled for the first time this year already.
Oh.
So,
well, the next question I'm going to ask then, which is, what did you grill?
Man, I love how I just set that trap and you just came right for it. No, I just was lame and did hamburgers. So we don't have anything fancy, like it's just a charbroil 4-burner grill. There's no like Blackstone or anything cool. But just hamburgers and tater tots, but had a bonfire at the same time. So it was like full summer mode for me. I was pretty happy with that.
Sounds lovely.
Yeah. But anyway, today's topic is community group leader health. Kind of tied up into that is community group health, but also just kind of the ins and outs of what it looks like to lead a community group, how the leaders themselves care for the group, how they prepare for lessons, how they care for themselves, etc. And to discuss that with us, we're joined today by our guest. We have Andrew Tate. Andrew, good to see you.
Good to meet you.
Yeah. I don't know if there's going to be any name problems.
I was going to say, I'd be really careful telling people you had Andrew Tate on your podcast, because you might get some unwanted attention from that.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, that might be the most views we ever get, though. So.
Just engagement farming at this point. So, I said good to meet you. Ryan and I were roommates in college.
That's true.
Everybody knew that. But
it's a true story. Yeah, a long ways. And then we're also joined with Pastor Ryan Coholich. How are you doing, Ryan?
Yeah, doing well. Really glad to be here. I actually I had a flannel picked out to preach on Sunday, and I've been saving it for like weeks, and then it was 85 degrees outside.
So, man, what are you doing, Ohio? Come on, get your act together.
Was it classic red, black flannel?
No, it was white and blue, I think. So
there was a time I think flannel was the unofficial uniform of everyone at Veritas. Like, if you wanted to fit in, you just go get a flannel at the thrift store and you'd fit right in.
It's like quarter zips or vests for the finance bros.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, cool. Well, we had both Andrew and Ryan. We have you joining us today because both of you guys lead your own community groups.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, we were kind of conversing before we started recording. You were the first guest, along with Chris McConaughey, in our first podcast episode on the topic of community as a rhythm of Veritas. Yes. So obviously you know what you're talking about. So
yeah, I'm glad to be back.
Yeah, good. Glad to have you guys on. So I'd love to just kind of start with just a generic, like, what has your experience been with leading a community group? Andrew, maybe we can start with you.
Sure. Yeah, so I've been leading a community group now for 6 years. Both these guys are actually in my community group in Clintonville. And so I had gotten started, we had started having conversations about multiplying the group we were in. The group was hosted by Neil and Holly Leonard, Pastor Neil now, but at the time he was our community group leader and serving in all kinds of ways. And so their group, well, I should say our group was kind of born out of necessity at the time. their group was phenomenal. It was really healthy. It was also massive. They probably had 25 people weekly that were attending, not just on like a roster, but attending every week. And so it got pretty packed. And we had started some conversations before the pandemic. I had come from kind of a ministry background. I volunteered with Young Life in college. And so I was kind of familiar with leading Bible studies and being in that kind of atmosphere. And so I rose my hand just to kind of say, hey, I'll be a part of this new group, but I will, I'd offer to help lead discussion from time to time if that was the case. And somehow along the line that got turned into, okay, you're going to help lead this community group. And so, to be honest, I was really insecure about it at the time. I was much younger than everybody else in our group. I was the ripe age of 24 years old. And so I was very insecure about that. And just, it was something that I remember talking to Neil about it. We got breakfast and I shared that with him and he was kind of like, yeah, you'll be okay. And no real advice or anything practical. Just said, yeah, I felt that way too, but you'll be okay. And so we were planning on multiplying at the time, but then the pandemic happened. And so that kind of got put on hold. And if you guys remember, there was that period of time where we were allowed to gather inside for, I think it was like 10 people in a room or something like that. And that's what we ended up doing was we had 10 people that had kind of signed up to be a part of this new group. And so we were meeting outside at the time, but we started at Martha and John Bove's apartment in Clintonville. We still meet at their house there now. They've gotten a little bit more space, but that's kind of how I got started. It's been honestly just a privilege. I really appreciate the people that are in our group currently, that have been in our group in the past, and it's been a great time. I really feel blessed to be a part of the people that were in our group, I should say.
Yeah. Well, I mean, as you mentioned, like both Michael and I attend the community group that you lead. So I would speak for myself, but I'm sure Michael would agree that, I mean, it's been quite an amazing group just to see how it's grown and gone through different life changes. I mean, I think I joined the group, I want to say maybe 3 years ago now. And at the time nobody had kids and now there's like
they are everywhere.
Yeah, there's like 5 kids under the age of 3.
Yeah, nice.
So it's been cool to walk through those stages of life together and just see how everybody's kind of come alongside each other and different stages of life. So I appreciate your leadership in that. It's been really good.
Well, I appreciate that. Praise God, man.
Yeah. Ryan, how about you? Kind of how'd you get started leading a group? I assume that's probably, you being a pastor, it has something to do with that.
Well, yeah, I mean, even before I came to Veritas 2013, and so probably like within the last 10 years or so, been leading on and off for co-leading in some fashion. And so obviously through that have been through a ton of variations from, being a part of a group on the east side and then the east side congregation dissolving and then coming on staff in 2018. There were 3 families down in Grove City from Tri-Village then, now Tri-City. And we just like kind of out of being in the same area, just started meeting together, not even officially a community group, but that turned into a community group that I guess we were leading just by de facto. I was a pastor. And so that has been growing since then. So, I mean, we've gone through so many variations of people coming and going. But, at times we had as many as 40 people, which were 20 adults and 20 kids. It was crazy. So you guys talk about having 5 kids and not feeling like nuts, like 20 is insane.
Yeah.
And then we've multiplied, and then kind of absorbed some folks who went on the multiplication. So it's just been a lot of variation, which has been very sweet in some ways and very challenging in other ways. But our current group, I truly feel like we try to really do a meal together when we meet as a whole group, and it really feels like a family reunion when we're together. And so there's just a beautiful reality of we have folks that are empty nesters, down folks in their 20s, folks that just had a baby, folks with older kids. So it is the mix of life stages, and
that's great.
How they come together in such a beautiful way, like truly paints a picture of the beauty of community and what Christ can bring together from folks of all different backgrounds and life stage. And so I'm super, super thankful for our group, and I've been so blessed by it, and I'm so honored to be leading it.
I'd kind of like to dig a little more into your guys' specific roles as the leader of your respective groups. Andrew, a minute ago, you said that when you first the group split and you decided to raise your hand and say like, oh, I can lead some discussions, and then you became the leader of the group. You said you felt like a little nervous about it, or underprepared, or however you worded it, underqualified or whatever.
Well, I do want to be clear. So I lead the group with my wife, Katie, and then we also had, at the time, we had another woman that was leading the group with us as well, and she was great. We were able to the three of us were really able to lean on one another. Once my wife and I got married, we kind of we had some discussions, and we felt very convicted to become members, to take a little bit more ownership, I would say, to really be plugged in that way. And so we had been attending the group for a while, and it was very clear that there was a need. And just in my own personal prayer life at the time, I can remember thinking like, man, you serving in the church, it's not necessarily about where you're gifted or what comes easy to you, but some advice I had gotten at the time was really to look and see where the needs are in your church, because no matter what church you go to or what size it is, there's going to be all kinds of different needs. And so they had been asking about it for a few months, and my wife and I, we were kind of on the same page, like, okay, this is something that we should probably do. To be honest with you, it brought to me a really sweet dependence on the Lord early on, and just had to be so prayerful when it came to discussions and just that time. And I think I felt a lot of pressure that, man, in order for this group to be fruitful or succeed, like that would be dependent on me. And that's just not the case at all. And I believe that now more than ever. And truthfully, I see the Lord has done things over years, and he's done different things in people's lives and in our lives, and we've been blessed by our group. And it's just true. I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but it's been the Lord that has done a lot of work in our group, and really just embracing that, I think, has helped me with my own nerves over the years. And I definitely feel a lot more comfortable in the role now.
I love that what you said, like the humility that it brought you at the time is something that the Lord needed to teach you in the moment, like, and just through pressing in, like, is how you've grown in those skills. I love that. Ryan, what about you? I mean, when you first started, I mean, obviously you're a pastor, so I'm sure you have like a different type of skill set with this, but did you feel maybe overwhelmed with the idea of leading a group, or what were some of the things that kind of changed as you began to step into that role of leading this community group?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. I think in some ways, small groups are very natural to me because I have a counseling heart. And so the smaller the group, usually the more personal you can get with people. And so I just have loved the chance to dive into people's lives and be really particular about how do we apply God's word in your life. And that's where my heart's always been. I think the challenge came to me when I would, and I know other leaders have struggled with this who are starting out, like they compare themselves to really, really smart leaders or leaders who are totally different than them. And that's like, I think when our group was starting to grow, I would picture these really smart, wise people in our church. And I'm just like, I am not smart like they are. I don't have that kind of knowledge or that passion about certain things. And I felt a little intimidated in that sense. And then over the years, I've just seen the beauty of like just embracing the fact that I'm a different part of the body. I have a different passion, a different skill set. The Lord has just crafted me differently than people, and that is a beautiful thing. And so it's like when comparing happens, I think there is that hesitation, or I'm not like this part of the body, and so I'm not as valuable. And the truth is, like as 1 Corinthians 12 says, it's even the weakest parts are indispensable of the body. And so there was just an embracing of, man, if counseling and care is like where my heart's at, I'm going to lean into that in our group, and you'll see this in every group. It has a personality and it reflects the leader. And so it's cool how, you tend to see just folks grow in areas where the leader tends to be passionate about. And that doesn't mean that they should stay fixed on that one area or passion, but there's just been a lot of freedom to really like walk as the Lord created me to walk and love people and the way he created me to. And so I found a lot of freedom in that and a lot of joy in our group. And I think the freedom to shape the group as a leader too has been something that's been really unique and neat that I can, like we really press into shepherd groups as well, where we get together. Again, it's like the smaller the group, the more personal and the more accountability I feel like you can have. And so being able to shape that as just a normal part of our rhythm of group has really led to a lot of discipleship and accountability. And
can you maybe talk a little bit about that? I'd love to hear kind of how you guys as individuals like maybe prepare for a discussion, and then what it's like in the moment to facilitate a discussion. Like I'm sure both of you have experienced plenty of times where you may have asked a discussion question and the room just is silent for like several awkward seconds, right? Or you've asked a question and maybe it's gotten a little bit like more reaction or more input than you thought. So can you talk about like what your experience facilitating a group has been like? Mm-hmm. Ryan, maybe we can start with you.
Yeah, for sure. And I may have the edge because I write our community group questions every week for Tri-City, but truthfully, like, and those are just innate. Like we send out those questions and I tell our leaders, like, please use them or not use them, however you will, but spend time just a little bit beforehand meditating on it and really finding what you want to talk about with your people, because you know your people better than I do. And so I found that the best discussions have been times where I've sat down with the text and really like processed through specific questions that would both help us understand like and really embrace the meaning of the text and fall more in love with Jesus from the text, but also how do we take that and personalize that in our walks with the Lord. So I lean a little more heavily towards the application side, I think, when it comes to community group. But I, like, again, with the counseling heart, I'm very aware of introverts and people who are hesitant to talk. And so even calling names sometimes, I know that can be uncomfortable. So again, you need to know your people, but knowing there's internal processors and there's external processors. I've got people in my group, I know if I leave silent for too long, we'll just talk because they can't stand it. And so I sometimes will just call on someone who looks like they're thinking, and sometimes they don't have anything to say, but I don't think they've ever been offended that I've opened the doors for them to say something. But I find more often than not, people will have something to share if they're given the opportunity. And so that has helped just facilitate a balance and discussion if you know your people well and can kind of like prompt some answers out of them. I've definitely had those nights where I've asked a question and I've had crickets, and then afterwards I'm like, was I just way off, or like my question's too deep? And so I tend to not stay surface either. And so sometimes I go too deep too fast, and I need to like let people warm up and like gotta do an icebreaker, and we can't just share our deepest sin struggles, immediately. And so yeah, I try to balance, like, so that's where, like, let's understand the text, but then as people answer, this is where counseling really is a skill, because you learn, like, the first answer is usually kind of up here in general, just kind of an idea, but then you press into that and it's the follow-up question that makes it a little more real, a little more true to me. Like, how is this true to me, and what does it say, And so as people share, I encourage our folks to ask those follow-up questions so we can kind of dig deeper and make that word come to life, in a sense, for our lives. God's word is living and active, and so as we like see that it applies to our life, I think that's how we experience that living and active word. So yeah, just spending time beforehand, though, again, that really does. Every time I've spent more time preparing, the conversation, I feel like, just has gone better, because I know kind of the direction in general that I want to go. And then obviously if there are tangents, it depends on the seriousness of the tangent or the care needed for someone if they share something very personal that we might sidetrack. But I think, yeah, just to have a general direction you're headed is so helpful in knowing how to kind of guide the discussion and reel people back in if you need to.
No, I would agree. I mean, I think a lot of it starts with, I would agree, preparation beforehand. And honestly, I take a lot of liberty with the questions. I mean, I don't prepare them for our whole congregation. I've done that in the past when I've helped out Chris McConaughey with some stuff. But I would say when I lead discussion, it's probably 50-50 questions that I came up with, or maybe just to help stay on track. I like to really lean on what the pastors have prepared, and it's usually been really helpful. I'll be honest, one thing I try to pay attention to is just if people are tracking, if they understand the question, maybe it was by wording or something like that. You guys could probably attest to this. I reword my questions all the time, just because it makes sense in my head, or it might not make sense the way it came out to other people. And so, that's one thing I try to pay attention to if the silence is going too long. If it's one of those things where it's just an uncomfortable question, or maybe if it's something that people really have to think about, I'll just wait, if I'm being honest. I think that it's good to make people think. It's good to make people be uncomfortable. And that's kind of what we designed that space for as well. So it really just depends. It depends on the question and I guess where you're trying to go, kind of like Ryan said. I will say this one thing too, that I would say that we teach community group leaders to expect, or at least to look out for, is to kind of have their thumb on the pulse of the group. Kind of like Ryan was getting at this as well, but thinking about what are the needs of the group, what's an area where they can grow, just to kind of have an idea of their spiritual health just in general. I mean, they're not pastors or anything like that. We're not professionals. You really don't have to be either, but also too, you can, just by living life with people, you can have an idea of what's going on with them, or maybe this is something that they might need to hear. Just when I'm preparing, I will pray and say, I hope that this hits this person in this way, or I hope this softens this person's heart. That's stuff that I try to keep in mind as well as I lead discussion. And yeah, does that answer your question?
No, yeah, it does. And actually, it gives me a lot of context. And so I think you guys both hit on the key theme of knowing your people, right? Like having your thumb on the pulse of your group. And that kind of leads me to this question that I've been curious about. And Ryan, I think you kind of discussed this with Chris McConaughey when we talked about community groups as a rhythm, or community as a rhythm, community groups just being an expression of that. How are community groups at Veritas different than just Bible studies? Maybe you can speak to that a little bit.
I invite people to see our community groups as a people, not as an event. And I think that mindset changes from how you see it, because it's not like a 2-hour time commitment on a Tuesday night, and it's like, oh, I could or I couldn't go to this event that's happening Tuesday night, but rather if you're a part of a people, it's no longer like I can or can't go to this thing. It's like, no, I'm a part of this people, and so I'm robbing the group of my giftings if I'm not going. And it just causes you to really reorient how you think about spending time with people, because again, it's no longer this Tuesday night thing. It's like, I want to live life together. If we're people committed to each other, how can we incorporate each other in our everyday lives? When we're going to the park, how do we make sure we're inviting people to that? How do we just sit together at church? There's an easy opportunity to spend more time as a community together. And yeah, you just think differently when you're thinking about the community as a people and not an event you're going to. And the other thing I'll just say is Bible studies, they can be, really good ones can get personal, but they just tend to be more fact-based and knowledge-based. And that's where community groups, I would say, are a space. Obviously, we're trying to achieve all of our rhythms in this space, but we want to share life together with people. And so it's much more than just, we're not just aiming for the head, we're aiming for the heart as well with people. And so when we talk about these truths, yes, we want people to have right answers, but more than that, we want them to love the Lord and to have their lives line up with their beliefs and their faith. And so it's navigating all of that together and living life together. And so we're there when someone's kid disobeys, and we have to watch how they handle it, and we can speak truth into that. And that is, you're not going to find that in a Bible study. That's just answer. It's actually, here's real life application of how these truths are significant to your life.
How do you as the leader set the tone for that? So I love what you said, right? It's more than just knowledge, it's head and heart.
Yeah.
It's a people. I love how you worded that. You're part of something that is more than just an event.
Yeah.
But you as the community group leader, how do you set the tone for that so that you do kind of have a vested interest in a people?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it starts with just genuinely caring and wanting to be a friend to my people. I think if my heart for my people is to be a friend to them and a good leader, I want to convey the things I share, even if they're not fun things to hear, are done because I love you and I want to see you grow. And I just envelop everything in that kind of idea that I really am trying to see you grow as a brother or sister in Christ. And we are for one another. And so there will be, especially when new folks come, I'll start a group discussion by saying this is a safe space where we are not judging each other, that we're not trying to have the right answers. Like, I want us to be honest and vulnerable and real, because I want our faith to be real to us, and not just the answers that we know are true, but like true and beautiful to us. And so even saying that out loud and kind of setting the tone for the people, I think is very helpful, especially for new folks coming in to see us. But I've experienced this from other men in the group too. And I think just again, and I don't know if it's the personality again, my personality that just likes to dig, but I think the men know that I love them, and that's why I push into some hard things going on in their life. And I also know that's why they push into my life, is they love me and they really want me to grow and care for me. And so there's just a friendship and a brotherly affection, as Romans 12 talks about, that we have for one another. And and I see that, and I think that helps you, just your heart be open and receptive to a lot of these truths and things we're going through.
Yeah. Andrew, what about you? How do you kind of set the tone for your community group to be like a community group and not just a Bible study?
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that's something, honestly, that I've had to think about a lot. And one thing that I think is kind of unique to Veritas Shore North is, because we are so close to Ohio State's campus, we get tons of new people every year, honestly, about this time of year, who come to Ohio State for school, whether it's a graduate program or they're an undergrad student, whatever it might be. We get an influx of people in the summer every year. A lot of times people will come and they're already Christians, and maybe they were referred to Veritas through one of our church planning networks, or just people kind of knew where we were and denomination things. I don't know, but we get referred all the time. And so we have a lot of people who show up who maybe have an idea of what church looks like, or they've come from a community and they kind of know when they show up, they're like, all right, well, I should get plugged in, right? And so we've had a lot of people join our group that way. And I think one of the things that's really cool that the Lord does is there is some kind of natural friction there when believers get together. We do normal rhythms, like we pray for one another, we confess to one another, we do these things, like we get together for Bible study or community group or whatever it is. And the natural, hey, I heard you ask for prayer for this, how are you doing? Or I remember you told me your grandfather's sick. How is he? That's some very natural things that God puts on our hearts. And when we're just around each other, that's kind of how it happens. I mean, I remember when our community group multiplied, we didn't really know each other very well. I mean, a lot of the people, we had been in group together, but we were part of a larger group, and then we were kind of thrown into this intimate setting. And I mean, at the time, I would say that none of us were like best friends, but now a lot of those same people are people that I love dearly. And it's not because we're a lot alike or because we have the same interests or anything like that, but it is because just over time we really developed this genuine care for one another, and I really do. I think that comes from the Lord, but also too, I think there are people that still show up that are new all the time, and they're not going to have those years of fellowship that you might have with other people. And I just think as a community group leader, you can kind of set the tone by being the person who goes and says hi, and introducing yourself. Usually, if somebody's referred to your group, you're usually given a heads up from the pastors and their contact information, so you can reach out and introduce yourself formally and kind of know if they're coming, kind of thing. But you can be that one who goes up and introduces yourself, and it's challenging, but that's where we put our faith in the Lord, and let him do the work there. Make sure that you follow up with them after they leave and just say, hey, it was really great having you. We'd love to have you back, or make sure to reach out and invite them again the next week, things like that, to just make them feel welcome right off the bat. And then again, I think that you can also too directly challenge the members of your group. And I don't know if we'll talk about this much, but sharing that kind of responsibility and kind of saying, hey, this is going to be the culture of our group as well, can be really helpful. And just say, hey, when somebody new comes, I would love it if you were the one that reached out to them. And in my experience, people respond to those kind of challenges well. And so, the Lord will, I think, convict them in a way, but at the same time, you can be that mouthpiece too.
No, that's excellent. I think you kind of touched on something that I'd like to get to. Is a little bit about how, as a leader, you delegate. Or I don't know if delegate is necessarily the word, but
yes, it is.
We talk all the time about at Veritas about like the body being made up of different gifts, right, and different people, right, and you need all of them in order to be functioning. And it's the same with community groups because it's a microcosm of the body itself, and I'm sure it's the same with shepherd groups too. So how do you, as a leader, kind of like encourage other people in your group to use their gifts, to delegate your, like, the responsibilities, like, hey, you might be a really good host, or you might be really good at, remembering people's names or saying hi or whatever. How do you kind of recognize that in somebody and then kind of like call it out in them? Brian, do you have any thoughts on that?
I'll start with a story. We were at a point in our community group that when it was probably at its biggest that we were purchasing like paper plates so it'd be easy cleanup, but the expense added up if you're doing that over and over again for your group, and we were the only ones buying it. And so we were just honest with our group, and I think that's one of the first steps, is just to be honest about needs and your capacity. And we're like, we just can't continue buying plates every week. We'd love to just buy one set that we wash and we just reuse. And just opening up the need like that made people aware of it. And I feel like people just didn't think about it if they weren't hosting. And so the awareness of it is the first thing. And I love that, of course, we have the empty nesters who might have more income than others. And the guy came up to me after we shared this need and everyone was already willing to chip in. And he comes up to me really quietly, like leans in. He's like, hey, whatever you need, I'll take care of it. And so I'm picturing the Godfather here. And I'm like, no, like we've talked about it. We're going to chip in as a group. And he's like, no, this I do for you. And I think it's the beauty of just sharing the need. And I think we have to be humble enough as leaders to admit, man, we do not have the capacity to do everything. And so we really need help. And so it starts with the humility and knowing yourself and where your limits are, and then sharing those honestly. And Andrew, I love what you said about specifically members in our group, people we know who are committed to the church, like really pressing into that and asking them to use their gifts and to be a part of the group in a more significant way. So the only other thing I think about in terms of delegating is knowing you have someone sharing those responsibilities as a leader helps you just feel so much more freedom in how you lead and not carrying the weight all the time. And so having an apprentice, almost every group should have an apprentice ideally, but just having an apprentice kind of shows the group, we don't think we know we're not like the ultimate end of this group. Like you don't have to stay with us. The goal is to multiply one day. There's just a lot that's said just by having an apprentice and shared leadership. And so I found that, the beauty of having an apprentice kind of creates a vision in itself of what the group is headed towards, and helps people start thinking about, okay, they're contributing in this way. How else can I contribute with my gifts? And some people need to be called out and so gently pushed a little bit towards using their gifts. But I've seen a really beauty in people willing to do that if you do give them that challenge.
Yeah, well, definitely. No, I think that's great. And one thing that has stuck out to me just as I've gotten to assist with just responsibilities and gotten to meet more community group leaders, a lot of people think that leading a community group is just leading a discussion and preparing that. And that's kind of the lens that most people see. I would say most of it is handling logistics and planning and administrative and reaching out to people. And that's probably 75% of what I do as a community group leader. And I would also say that the quote unquote traditional community group leader model, kind of what we've seen is, and I guess the expectation's a poor word, sorry, but something that people think of is, okay, there's a husband and wife, they lead the group, they have it in their home. right? And then people show up and then they teach and they do everything, right? They plan the meal, whatever it might be. And that's a lot for one couple to do every week. And so our group has actually never had that model. When we started the group, it was my wife and I, but then we had another woman who was single. She was leading the group with us at the time. None of us hosted. We had another couple that they hosted, and that was the extent of their leading the group, if that makes sense. And they still host, and that's something that they do very well. They still do it very well, and we love having it at their house. And so, not being afraid to look a little less traditional is totally fine. We love it when people are single. I think people feel that way when they're single. They don't want to raise their hand, and they're like, oh, well, I don't know. But not being afraid to kind of be outside of the box in that way. I would also add to, kind of like you said, challenging people is totally okay, and saying, hey, I see this gift in you. I think you're really good at it. And I think people respond well. And I would echo what Ryan said, just leading from vulnerability. And a lot of times new community group leaders, when they're just starting out, maybe they've had a rhythm, they've kind of gotten their pace down for probably the first year or two, then maybe something changes, or they need to raise their hand, or they've got something coming up. Like I know when we had our daughter, we had to raise our hand and say, hey guys, we're not going to be here for a month. We need somebody else to lead discussion or help prepare. And we had people that, Ryan, you were one of those people, and another woman in our group, they rose their hand and said, yeah, I can help you with that. And that was so nice for us. And just to be able to raise our hand out of vulnerability and out of need, it was very encouraging and very freeing, because I knew, like, if I need to do this again, I have people I can call on.
I'm so glad you mentioned that, Andrew, because I was wanting to ask, or wanting to share the fact that our community group has this model of a lot of shared responsibility. Sometimes when you lead, you're not hosting. Sometimes if you can't make it, someone else is leading. And just that seems like a really cool way for all the members to feel connected some way in the group, which leads to my other reflection about vulnerability, which you guys do a really good job modeling for your groups. Andrew, I know that from firsthand. That vulnerability is like setting that example is the way for members of the group to feel more connected to one another and more invested in the group. And so I just, from personal experience, that's one of the most important things that I see community group leaders doing, is just setting example, like you said, Ryan, about the dishes, and like that's being vulnerable too, and that opens up the pathway for needs to be met and for connection to happen. And that's a dynamic that is hard to find sometimes outside of church, especially in group settings. And I think that's something that you guys do really well, because sometimes you have, Andrew, in our group we have kids, we've got married couples, we've got single people, college students, and just to open up that, I guess, to open the space for that kind of vulnerability is so cool and really important.
Well, I appreciate that, man. It's definitely, honestly, we've definitely come to points, Katie and I, where we just kind of need to. We're like, hey, we've got nothing. And I think that was something I mentioned earlier I was really insecure about when I started leading a group was, man, I felt like I needed to be super godly or have confident answers all the time. And that's just not true. I mean, I think, kind of like you said, I think people really do appreciate the vulnerability. And then when, in my experience, it's almost always gone well. If I've kind of reached out and said, hey, I'm struggling with this, or hey, this is a need, I can't really think of a time where I feel like I've personally been let down. And that's because the Holy Spirit, he does work in people's hearts.
You guys are obviously in community groups, but you're leading them. You don't really get to participate like other people get to participate, right? Do you guys always feel the pressure of being like on, so to speak? Not necessarily what you were saying, Andrew, about like having the right answers and sounding super godly, but I mean, like, you can't just show up and wait for somebody to ask you questions and wait for somebody else to start discussion. I mean, sometimes if somebody else is helping you lead, maybe you can, but what's that like being the one who's like facilitating this instead of just participating?
Yeah, and I'll answer. I think it would depend on the dynamic of the group. again, I've been through many seasons, variations of group, and some have been with friends and men my own age, and some have been with folks further from the Lord or new believers or a lot younger. And so I think in general, and this is just personally, I'm not speaking for all leaders here, but personally, because I have a pastor hat and a community group leader hat, I tend to feel like my hat is on more often, and in a good way, I find a joy in pursuing people and discipling them. But I found in that I absolutely need peers whom I can be friends with too. And so I'm so thankful that there are still, a couple guys in my group that I feel are peers, and I don't have to have my hat on all the time. And so maybe during discussion where I have to be a little more directional with the conversation, I do have my hat on, but there are so many times I'll go fishing with one of those guys, or we'll play basketball, or just do something fun together where I feel like, man, this is just enjoying one another in our group. And so I feel like that balance is really necessary if you're going to continue leading for the long haul. You need friends and you need peers who you can share just life with without feeling like I have to be a certain person. And there's good reasons to be discipling people and to, in a sense, have that hat on to, my goal is to go and make disciples of all nations. And I want to do that. But again, just the necessity that can't come from just your own strength indefinitely. Like, you really need to be poured into in some fashion. Hopefully first, in your own walk with the Lord, and let Christ and being united to him kind of fill your heart enough so that is a joy, but also the peers in your group who can.
How do you guys address burnout? Or like, do you ever come up against that feeling of like, man, I just need a week?
Yeah.
How do you address that?
Yeah. Andrew, what you said is like, just getting together with other community group leaders, I feel like is so valuable. And we try to do that at Tri-City as well, just to encourage each other and usually it's, man, this part of group is hard, and everyone will agree that yes, that is hard about group. And so just knowing that's a shared experience, I think helps sustain you in the ministry. In terms of your own personal health, I think it is just an awareness thing of where you're at. And so we do have like built-in times where we'll check in I think it's every 2 years, we try to check in with every leader and say, hey, where are you at spiritually? How's it going? I'm personally trying to just understand where people are at. So if they need a season where they just step away, that's possible. But our leaders at Tri-City are just, they tend to be like very aware of their capacities. And if they can't host a group for a month or even be a group for a month, then I think they're pretty quick to share that and have someone else step up and lead it. And so it's all coming together of like being able to delegate, being vulnerable and knowing your own capacity, making sure you have some kind of person checking in with you in your own walk with the Lord. Obviously that's going to be the most important thing. All of these together are kind of how, we want to ensure our leaders are healthy so that they're able to lead.
I'm going to brag on Chris McConaughey really quickly. I don't think people have the idea of the intention that he puts into knowing what's going on with every single community group leader and what's going on with them. And he often makes personal connections with everybody. And part of that is his job as a pastor, but he really genuinely cares and loves these people. And he thinks so far out ahead about what they've got going on, and not just their group health, but their personal lives as well. And that's one thing I've learned from him over the last couple of years, is just how intentional he is about that. We also too, in the Shore North, we do something where we kind of encourage certain people to check in on their community group leaders as well. And we actually, this is on the Veritas website somewhere, we actually came up with a video kind of like how to advocate for your community group leader. And some of the things we talked about, like sharing responsibilities, offering to host or lead discussion, again, being that point person to kind of follow up with visitors, whatever it might be. But really, it's hard to kind of ask for help for yourself, but it's really nice to be able to advocate for other people as well. It's much easier, I'll say. But I know personally, just it's with burnout, I've had seasons where I've definitely needed a break, but also too, I feel very blessed and I feel like I can call on people. And so I don't know. I guess I can't really answer that question anymore, but yeah.
One other thing I thought of is like, as a leader, you have the ability to do the format of your group however you want it. And so I think that is a freedom we love our leaders to know. Is like, I think when you probably start leading, your thought and maybe your stage of life is like, we need to meet every single week a certain way. It needs to look, this way. And I think once you start having kids and all the activities start happening, like it gets more challenging, and even hosting a lot of people gets more challenging. And so the freedom to be like, we're going to meet as a whole group every other week can be a lot more freeing and a lot less pressure on you to, again, be on all the time. And even doing things like, and then one of those times as a whole group, we might meet at a park, and that way no one's hosting and we can be more intentional with the community. So there are different formats you can have as a group in different seasons that allows. And if I'm feeling kind of thin right now and worn out a little bit, that I just need to space out, how we're meeting as a group, or empower someone else to step in and lead for you.
Yeah, I like how there's no like one size fits all kind of
definitely
mentality.
Yeah. One thing I would add to, I just thought of is, I think it's really okay for it to be challenging. Service, it should be challenging. We are called to die to ourselves. And so I think I would really challenge community group leaders to think, are you burning out, or is this challenging, right? And is this a season? Are you worried about the future? What's going on? And that can look different. Maybe you're new and you're not really quite sure. Maybe you're just going through a difficult season, and really the only way you'll know is by talking to people and going through it, right? But yeah, just kind of thinking about that as well, because there have been seasons where it's been challenging to be a community group leader. One, just because maybe I'm not feeling passionate about it, or maybe I've just had a lot of difficulty, or I've had outside factors going on. And to be honest, that's okay. It's okay to die to yourself. And I think that, we try to run from things that are challenging. That's kind of our human nature and our flesh talking, but it's okay, for it to be difficult. It should be, and that's what drives you to be dependent on the Lord.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're coming up towards the end here, but I did kind of want to ask one question. Andrew, you mentioned several times that you lead with your wife, Katie. Mm-hmm. Ryan, do you lead with your wife, or? Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the beauty and challenge of having a big group. So we have 2 adults watch our kids every time. Mm-hmm. And so typically, and this is where, my wife is always willing to die to self. And if someone happens to cancel on kids, she's always happy to jump in. And so I love when we can lead together. It is a beautiful balance of like, just from a man's perspective, tend to speak the truth a little more bluntly and harshly. And she is very good about, especially with other women, like just adding a gentleness and, speaking the truth in love. And she's just wonderful about doing that. And so together to see, in any group, a man and a woman, like able to balance and complement each other in that way is a really beautiful reality.
Well, you preempted my question. I love it. No, it's great. No, that's perfect. My question was like, what's it like meeting as a couple? Yeah. Because you're like, as you guys have both mentioned, our community groups at Veritas, at all 3 congregations, like they're not necessarily demographic specific.
Yeah.
You have like men and women, all different stages of life, kids, no kids, single, college, married. So having a feminine connection with females and a masculine connection with males, like what's that experience been like for you? Andrew, I guess I could turn it to you.
In terms of interacting, like her interacting with the women in her group, I think that's something she finds a lot of purpose in, specifically just since she's become a mother, and we're going to have 7 children under 2 years old by the time September rolls around this year. And so it's a super fun time for our group, and we're really excited about that. But they have found a really, really cool community just with the moms and supporting one another. And that's something that I think she finds a lot of purpose in. Obviously that I'm not going to find myself in those group chats or in those conversations. And that's appropriate, right? Mm-hmm. And so I think that that's one thing that she's really valued. And when we try to have separate men's and women's group for that reason every once in a while. And I think that she's done a really good job, and she's found a lot of purpose in that too.
Well, the last question I have is, what is one thing that if you could just wave a wand that your community group could do to help you lead? Like, what's one thing they could do to make it, like, I don't know if I'd say easier, but more, more fulfilling, or, et cetera.
I don't know, Ryan, you got anything?
It's a great question. I would want people to be all in, like, and that's just excited and eager to serve and volunteer themselves. I feel like that would make such a world of a difference. I know there are just seasons, especially with kids, where there's all the excuses to not come to group or not contribute in a certain way or do the easy thing. And just the willingness for someone to jump in and help out and serve where there's a space for a need and do so joyfully is something that it makes the group life-giving. And so that's the one thing. I'll add another thing, and just be thankful. I think just that thankful heart towards your leaders and knowing, like, they are preparing, they are many times opening up their home, they're trying to disciple you, like, just that thankful heart and commitment to them as leading you is really valuable too.
All right. Yep, I got one. So this is not just my group, but just all groups really in the church. One thing that I would say is that it is really difficult to raise your hand, and to lead from vulnerability, especially if you're really struggling with something that's not something that you necessarily want to, you don't jump out of bed ready to talk about with your group or show up and, you're not excited to have those conversations. And so your community group leader, they might be having a hard time. They might be struggling. I mean, sure, they might share something as a prayer request, but they also might be having trouble with the logistics of their group. Right. And so I know I was joking earlier about leaving on time, but seriously, like, respecting people's home, showing up on time, starting on time, leaving on time. That's funny. But at the same time, it does. It respects their home, and it lets them have their space back a little bit. But I would just, I would challenge every member just to think about that. Think about what is a way that I could be helping them, something I could take off their plate, because so much of their job is logistics and administration. It's not just leading discussion every week, but there's a lot of back work that goes into that. And so I would just advocate and challenge our congregation that if there is a way that you could be serving, or if you just have the opportunity to ask your community group leader, realistically, there's probably something that you could be helping with. And I would encourage community group leaders to speak up.
I love it. Well, just again, want to echo our appreciation for both of you guys taking the time to do this recording, but also just more broadly, like the way you serve the body and the way that you love people in your community group and serve them. And I know you both have been doing this for years, and there's hopefully many more years to come. And just really appreciate you guys' time today. So without further ado, I think that will do it for us today on the Voices of Veritas podcast. Tune in next time.